What's up, guys? I'm Alex Duran. Thanks for tuning in to Corrections Unlocked. On today's episode, we're going to go over escorting inmates. This is something we do a lot of. This is something we can be easily hurt doing, so it's something I wanted to talk about and get an idea to see where you guys were at. And I'll give you a few quick tips that have helped me along the way. So when escorting an inmate, guys, there's a lot of things to take into consideration. But one is going to be hand placement. A lot of officers, when escorting an inmate, like to C-clamp or grab the bicep of an inmate. I used to do it, and I'll tell you why I don't do it anymore. Anytime I've seen officers grab the meaty portion of the bicep tricep area, when you're escorting that inmate, it's real easy for him to clench your hand in and pull you forward. Don't give him that opportunity. So if you're escorting an inmate and you have the meaty portion of his hand, you really have no control over that inmate. And it's real easy for him to just clench your hand down, pull you forward, headbutt you, mule kick you. I've seen a lot of different ways officers have been battered. So I stopped doing that, and I ended up transitioning my hand to the back of his tricep area. Having my hand on the back of an inmate's tricep area has helped me out and made me react a lot faster. Doing that, when an inmate wants to turn towards me, it's real easy for me to transition to the top of his shoulder and pull him down. Or if an inmate wants to act weird or he does something that I don't feel is right, it's real easy for me to push him forward, create distance, and grab my use of force option if needed. But if your hand is going to be put on his bicep area, it's real easy for him to trap you and bring you close. That's not a good thing for you as an officer. There's a lot of different ways to escort depending on what type of inmate you're dealing with. So one, when you approach an inmate cell, I always let him know where he's going and what we're doing. And I try to make eye contact with him to see what he's doing. If you see an inmate looking around, he's probably looking for a certain inmate that's either out or he's looking for a certain officer that's out. You got to remember there's 150, 200 inmates in an ad-6 setting. You don't know who he has beef with or you don't know who he's trying to get to. So I try to make it as safe as I can for me and that inmate. So if I see another inmate being escorted, I usually wait. If I see him cussing or barking at somebody, I'll usually wait. And when I feel like it's safe to do so, I'll open up the food port. Before you open up the food port, guys, a lot of things to take into consideration that we always get complacent with. Is the light on? Can I see both of his hands to make sure there's nothing in his hands? Am I to the side of the food port so that way I'm not directly in front of it for him easily to grab me? Open the food port, he places his hands through. Now you can go ahead and secure his hands. Me, it's just a natural reaction after I've worked ad-6 settings. I always handcuff an inmate's right hand first, and I always handcuff or unhandcuff his right hand last. When an inmate puts his hands through a food port, I want to have control over his strong hand as fast as I can. So I'll handcuff his right hand first. Now I have control over his right hand. It's just something that makes me feel more comfortable because I know he can't try to stab me, grab me, or do something as easy as he would be normally if I handcuffed his left hand first. So cuff him up, open the food port or close the food port, and then they open the door, and I'm going to escort him. Hand placement I like to keep on the back of his tricep area. If something doesn't feel right, I can easily push him forward and create distance. I can easily pull him down and put him down if I need to. Be cognitive about his feet placement. If you're escorting an inmate and he starts to stutter step or slow down, it's usually a good indication that he's getting ready to mule kick you. Lift up the back of his leg and kick you in your groin area. It happens all the time. You don't think about these things as a newer officer because you haven't seen it or it hasn't happened to you. I see it all the time as a supervisor. So if an inmate starts to stutter step, look down at him with your hand on the back of his tricep. If that's something you suspect or you think, push him forward, create distance, and then deal with that situation as needed. So I always recommend keeping contact with that inmate. Don't ever do an escort and not have contact. That's not an escort. If you take an inmate out of a cell and you need to escort him, you're having contact with that inmate somehow or one way or another. Don't be that guy or girl that's just walking with an inmate. That's not an escort. So hand placement is on the back of his tricep for me. I'm not a fan of the C-clamp. If it works for you, cool. I've seen too many incidents involved with that type of escort. I like to put it on the back. It gives me options and it makes me comfortable to where I can create distance or pull him close if needed. When you're working an ADSEG setting, guys, the two incidents you're going to deal with are going to be through a food port and during an escort, unless you're doing a controlled use of force. But 9 out of 10 times, those are going to be your two incidents. So you need to be very proficient at those two areas, and you need to start running these scenarios through your head. That's what works for me for hand placement. When I take an inmate back, I always handcuff his left hand first, his right hand last. I don't want to give this inmate the opportunity to where I handcuff his strongest hand first. Because 9 out of 10 times, if I handcuff his right hand and something's not right or he wants to do something to me, it's real easy for him to grab his whatever he has and try to get me, or it's real easy for him to turn around and try to gas me or whatever. So I naturally uncuff his left hand first, his weak hand for most guys, and then I handcuff his right hand and I secure the food port. But if you're just doing a regular escort, guys, you have a fight on the yard and you respond over there, you cuff him up, pat him down, something to take into consideration before you escort this inmate, where am I going, and is it safe to escort this inmate this area? If you have the Southerners and Bulldogs just rioted, I wouldn't be taking a Bulldog next to 20 Southerners. You're going to get them hurt, or yourself. So before you pick that inmate up and start escorting him, and he may try to escort that way to try to finish what he started or vice versa, whatever. Don't give him that opportunity. Don't put yourself in that situation. So before you escort that inmate, make sure you understand what fraction he is. Make sure you understand that this is an area that's safe to do it. And if it's not, communicate. Tell your officers, hey, man, you need to secure that area so I can take these two guys that way. Or, hey, Sergeant, I don't feel comfortable taking this guy there. Those guys, they're acting kind of weird. You got to communicate. Nobody communicates, and that's how people get hurt. So make sure when you're escorting an inmate, it's safe to take him in that area. Make sure your hand placement is comfortable for you, so that way it's easy for you to transition, whether you're going to create distance or whether you're going to bring him close to you. Be cognitive about your hand placement and make sure you're not put in a position to where your hand's going to get stuck or pulled in. Those are a few quick tips, guys, I have on escorting. I've seen a lot of different incidents with escorting. Those are things that have helped me along the way. Whatever works for you, I'd appreciate it if you dropped a comment. I'd appreciate if you let me know so that way we can learn from each other. I appreciate your time, guys. Thank you. I'm Alex Duran.